So I'm always between two currents of thought. First, the material difficulties, turning round and round to make a living. And second, the study of color. I'm always in the hope of making a discovery there. To express the love of two lovers by the marriage of two complementary colors, their mingling and their opposition, the mysterious vibrations of kindred tones. To express the thought of a brow by the radiance of light tone against a somber background. To express hope by some star, the eagerness of the soul by a sunset radiance. I don't know if you'll understand that one can speak poetry just by arranging colors well. Vincent Van Gogh is counted among the most famous and recognized artists in Western art history. His works such as Sunflowers, Benjamin Arle, and Starry Night are instantly recognizable even to those who are not interested in art. This is not only due to his characteristic wild and expressively dramatic brushwork, or to his unique post-impressionistic style, but also because of his use of color. Van Gogh is usually associated with the bold and bright colors which dominated the latter part of his career as an artist. However, his earlier paintings from the Netherlands, such as the Potato Eaters, feature a rather dark palette. Although the colors used in these contrasting works may seem like night and day, they are actually the result of the same color theory. Van Gogh's understanding of color was developed through his detailed study of Eugène Delacroix's color theories, which Van Gogh read about in Charles Blanc's Grammaire des Arts du Dessin, or the Grammar of Painting. Eugène Delacroix attempted to put physicist Michael-Eugène Chauvel's laws of simultaneous contrast into practice. The laws of simultaneous contrast, simply put, describe the phenomenon of how juxtaposed complementary colors reinforce one another. That is, help each other to pop, so to speak. This is the color wheel from Blanc's book. It shows the three primary colors: red, yellow, and blue. And it shows the secondary colors you get when you mix these primary colors. The complementary colors are those opposite one another on the wheel. If you put these colors next to one another, they will help each other stand out, and so look better together. For example, red and green are used a lot together. Think of Christmas time. You'll actually see this used in a lot of modern Hollywood movies. They tend to favor the complementary colors blue and orange. The theory is that because skin tones tend to be in the orange range, if you push everything else into the opposing color range, in this case blue, you will make your actors pop against the background, and hence get that Hollywood look. However, Van Gogh and Delacroix were not only interested in how different colors affect each other, but how they can affect the viewer. Van Gogh believed colors to have a psychological and moral weight. This is demonstrated by his saturation of reds and greens in the night cafe to, as he put it, express the terrible passions of humanity. Yellow was possibly his favorite color, because to him, it symbolized emotional truth. He used yellow as a symbol for sunlight, life, and God. To him, colors themselves tell a story. There is actually an entire subject of study dedicated to this theory. Color psychology is the study of how we respond neurologically, biochemically, and psychologically to color. Color psychology is extensively used in industries such as marketing, design, and cinema. film directors exploit our connection to color to manipulate the emotions of their audience on many conscious and even subconscious levels. In fact, colorists, the guys who manipulate the color of films, have certain guidelines as to how value, hue, and saturation of color tends to affect us. For example, blue might hint at sadness, isolation, coldness, cerebral calculation, or calmness. Whereas green could represent nature, life, innocence, or evil. But what is color? Great minds pondered this question for centuries. Aristotle developed one of the earliest known theories of color. In his work, De Coloribus, he theorized that color was perceived through combinations of light and darkness. For example, as he puts it, when what is black and shady is mixed with light, the result is red, for we see that when what is black is mixed with the light of sun and fire, the result is always red. Our modern understanding of color begins with Isaac Newton. In 1666, Newton started experimenting with light and color. He closed his blinds and poked a little hole in them so only a small ray of light could enter through. He then, placing a prism into this ray, saw a beautiful spectrum of all the colors of the rainbow projected on the far wall. Now, people at the time knew that prisms made this rainbow, but they thought it was because the prism added impurities to the pure white light, muddying it and causing it to be colored. So to prove that the prism was not coloring the light, Newton used a second prism to refract the light back together into pure white light. Newton had successfully proven that white light consists of all the colors of the rainbow, which we now call the visible spectrum of light. Newton then assigned 7 colors to this spectrum, in an analogy with the musical scale. Artists were fascinated by Newton's clear demonstration that light alone was responsible for color. But then, why do objects appear as different colors, even when there is no prism involved? Each color in the visible light spectrum corresponds to a certain wavelength. For example, the color red has a wavelength of about 620 to 750 nanometers, whereas blue has a wavelength of about 450 to 495 nanometers. When white light, that is light containing all the wavelengths of visible light, shines on a certain object, certain characteristics of the atoms of this object cause those atoms to absorb certain wavelengths of light, but not others. So when we see red paint, what makes it red is that it is absorbing all the wavelengths apart from the red wavelengths. In other words, without light, we would not be able to see any colors, or anything at all for that matter. This is why, in part, that light is one of the most ancient and significant metaphors for the divine. Philosophers such as Plato, Philo, and Plotinus use light, or the sun, as an analogy for the good, or the one. And theologians such as Augustine and Aquinas use light as a metaphor when discussing the theology of divine illumination. I like how the medieval philosopher and theologian Pseudo-Dionysius puts it in his work, The Divine Names. Think of how it is with our sun. It exercises no rational process, no act of choice, and yet by the very fact of its existence, it gives light to whatever is able to partake of its light, in its own way. And so it is with the good, existing far above the sun, an archetype far superior to its dull image. It sends the rays of its undivided goodness onto everything with the capacity, such as it may be, to receive it. Thus the good is praised with the name light, just as an archetype is revealed in its image. The goodness of the transcendent God reaches from the highest and most perfect forms of being to the very lowest. And yet it remains above and beyond them all, superior to the highest, yet stretching down to the lowest. It gives light to everything capable of receiving it. It creates them, keeps them alive, preserves and perfects them. The divine artist describes himself as the light of the world. He created light to be used as a metaphor or an analogy for himself. And I think that like physical light, he is made up of many colors, too many to count, as many as there are grains of sand on all the beaches of the earth and beyond. And I like to think that each of us reflects unique hues, values, and saturations of these colors, different aspects of the character of the divine, a brilliant spectrum of color that the great artist spreads like paint on a canvas, creating a masterpiece of his image to the world.
The holographic principle suggests that what we all experience every day in 3 dimensions may really just be information on a surface located at the farthest reaches of our cosmos. So it's possible that our lives are really just acting out a painting on the largest canvas in the universe. What?
Sometimes I forget how smart you are.